what other things? What other things follow that pattern? Things that are not so difficult to acquire, but difficult to keep.
Yeah.
And I think wisdom, such as it is, isn't necessarily difficult to acquire, but it's difficult to keep reliably. That's the tricky part. And that's kind of what distinguishes the expert in any discipline from the amateur, isn't it? Is that anyone can have a good day, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't, like I'm really terrible at pool, but every once in a while I'm really good, like billiards. I mean, like every once in a while I'll show up and I'll just kill it.
Yeah.
But I can't do that every time. You know what I mean? It's only once in every 10 times that I'm on a streak. And that's why I'm not a good pool player, even though I have good moments. And I think it's the same idea.
Right.
It's maintaining, not attaining.
Right. Right. So your brief 15 minutes of enlightenment don't necessarily point to a someone who's enlightened. It points to perhaps a good game of pool.
Yeah, it's a good game of pool.
Do you think wisdom, something I always think about with wisdom is like that whole thing about if you have it, if you say you have it, you don't.
Yes.
Right? Like there's something that seems so, I don't know, constitutional of it, which is its unownability.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
Its unthingableness. It's like it's almost anti having mode.
Yes.
Right? Smells the having mode from like 1,000 miles away and just calls in the fool to cover for it, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And now what does that say? Okay, so if wisdom and so let's say enlightenment, right, are these things that, because I've often too had that thing about enlightenment when people talk about being enlightened. Like, first of all, most of the time, the person who allegedly is enlightened isn't the one saying that they're enlightened.
No.
Usually they're not.
No. Usually they don't have interest in saying very much at all.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, totally.
There's very little need to say very much.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah. And I also wonder if there's different kinds of enlightenment. If there's like an Eastern kind, there's a Western kind, right? In some sense, it does seem to be it with that too, with wisdom, with enlightenment, it does seem like it really is the so crucial that whatever its nature, it's something that cannot be grabbed onto and had or owned, right? So why is it gotta be like that?
Why is it gotta be like that?
Yeah, what's going on with that? What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. It might have something to do with time, probably.
Like
it might have something.
The shivering part.
Yeah. It might have something to do with the level of consciousness that tracks it and takes to it, right? Like I'm thinking about the flow state, right? The minute that the overweening awareness of being in that state becomes more pronounced than the state itself, then you've ultimately undercut it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not as though it's unconscious. I don't mean that, but I mean that the quality of consciousness that attends to the state, or that is attendant in the state, I don't know exactly how to put it, has to be, I would imagine, the kind that can participate and not the kind that will sabotage the mode of participation by undercutting its interest, right? The interest would have to stay trained, right?
Yeah.
The minute it becomes,
undercutting its interest.
Yeah. Like, the kind of pure interest that draws you out when you're attending to something, right? Or wonder, right? We can substitute all kinds of different different ways of describing the kind of transcendental attraction, but ultimately, whatever it is that's attracting has to be sufficiently absorbing that it sustains an unbroken kind of attention, an unbroken degree of interest and participation in it. That's not interrupted.
Right. Strangely, without the benefit of being some object. Right. So do all that, and you can't be ownable.
Can't be ownable. Yeah. And it has to somehow be coextensive with you, right? Not that you forget yourself in just the right way of forgetting yourself, right? That's right. And that's the difference. That's the modal difference. Being absorbed and interested to the degree that you become coextensive with whatever activity is being undertaken. You're undertaking yourself by undertaking the activity. As opposed to the activity being subordinated to a sense of self that could have it or not have it. Because the minute you can have something, you cannot have it. Not having it becomes an option, right? The minute you possess something, you risk being dispossessed of it. Right? That's the problem.
Right.
So to want to, like with Plato, right? Wanting to possess with beauty, there is no wanting to possess beauty or the good in care of beauty without wanting to possess it forever. Right. And you can't possess something forever because it's almost the definition of possession seems to buck that scenario in the first place. There's nothing that you could own forever. Because it would seem, I don't know, I'm speaking out of pure intuition. I haven't thought through this proposition at all. So test it.
Okay.
But the proposition that surfaces to me intuitively is that the nature of possession, at least in the way that we conceive of the term in the quotidian sense of every day, implies impermanence, right?
Right. So what you're saying is that the nature of possession implies impermanence. Therefore, what you're saying, if we say that something like enlightenment or what was the other thing we were talking about, is permanent enlightenment or wisdom, right? Right, is something, these are things that can only be fully had if they're not havable.
Right. Yeah. Right. You can have it if you don't. If you don't have it.
Exactly. Because then we're talking about, is it then we're talking about a mode, which is an interesting thing in itself, like a mode. Like if I'm in a mode of enlightenment, right?
What is a mode?
Yeah, like a mode.
What's a mode, Guy? What's a mode?
It's like, isn't it something like a disposition?
Okay.
Or some kind of cake.
A la mode? ice cream. I thought it
I
was
was
just
thinking
ice cream.
Alamo. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
What is a mode?
What
It's like
is a mode?
it's a little bit like a state, but it's a little bit
State.
more than a state, I think.
Okay. What is a mode? Okay, a state, but more than a state.
Right.
Cake and ice cream. We
Can be
know that.
modal.
That's the
You can be
it's the easy part.
modal and you can be confused.
You can be modal and you can be confused. Okay.
Therefore, you could have modal confusion.
Yes. Okay.
So that must
So
be
a mode is
as you say, it's the come from. It's the organizing thing that has to be
ooh,
place from which
I like that.
Yeah.
It's the come from.
Mhm.
It's okay. It's the come from.
Yep.
It is the where that experience comes from
Yes.
when it is of a certain mode.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Being aware is helpful because the sense of place comes in
Yeah.
to the fore, right?
Aware.
Because the sense of place is also the enclosure of perspective, right? So speaking of it as perspective, not like not perspective as in a vantage or the vantage of an opinion, which is what people often talk about perspective as though it's an opinion, right? Well, my perspective is. It's like, no, that's not your perspective. That's an opinion.
Yeah.
So mode, the where from of a mode seems to have something to do with the particular quality of a world that whose where from is a perspective, but only if the definition of perspective is the what it is like to be, right? That John uses to describe perspectivalness. So the what it is like and the where from are the same in this case.
Yeah.
Are we getting closer?
I think so.
Okay.
So in fact, the what it is like to be enlightened, the what it is like to be wise, right, is the same as what did you say? What was that last thing that you said?
The where from, and the what it is like.
Yeah. So when it is like what it is like to be wise is to be from wise, to be where from wise, right? What it is like to be enlightened is to be from enlightened.
Okay. So if by analogy, because this is all that's all that this is.
Yeah,
it's a place.
Yeah, place.
Okay. It's place.
Yeah.
It's place. And the broadest construal of the term, it has something to do with place.
Right.
With the where of one is.
Right.
Okay.
It's a wisdom, it's a pretty empty place.
Okay. It's an empty place. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then if the mode is the where from, then what does it mean to be modally confused? Is being modally confused being in the wrong place?
No, it's in some sense it's confusing. It's confusing where you are with where you're from.
Oh,
I think. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Tell me how that makes sense.
Okay. So the where from is that which you bring with you, wherever you happen to be, right? Yeah. Whomever you meet, wherever you happen to visit or travel or live or work, the where from is that place.
That place.
That you speak from, act from, listen through, sit in. That is your companion.
Yeah.
And it's your explanatory companion, right? It helps to interpret it's the hermeneutic compass, right? It helps to interpret whatever happens to be here
Yeah.
from the set of from what is true there.
Yep.
Where from, right?
Yep.
Where I'm from,
Yeah.
this is what we do. This is how we behave.
Yes.
This is how we speak.
Yeah.
This is how we think.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, this is where
Yeah.
I'm from.
Yes. Oh, I get where you're coming from.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a knack you have.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, then modal confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Confusing the where I'm from where is.
Yeah.
Because it might be that the where I'm from and all of those things that that I do and think and reach with and listen with and touch with and smell with are perfectly suited to where I'm from.
Yeah.
But they might not be able to reach and close a grip around where I am. Because it could be that we're talking about language, aren't we?
Yeah. The problem is we're using it too.
I know.
Yeah.
There's the rub.
So the where from, so we're talking about the where. So just to back up a little bit, this I'm having fun, by the way.
This is great. This is just
great.
playing around. That's good.
So the where from, we're talking about modes. We're actually talking about enlightenment and wisdom, and that these are things where if you have it, you don't have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have it, you have it. There's something unpossessable about that. Oh, it seems to have something to do with the mode, right?
Yeah.
And what is a mode? A mode is the where from, the where from which the world discloses itself to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that where from isn't one of the things that's disclosed. There it is. The where from is not one of the things disclosed. It discloses without itself becoming disclosed.
It is, I would say it is the disclosure.
Yeah. It is the disclosure.
The where from is the disclosure.
Yeah. It's what does the disclosing, right?
Yes.
Right?
To be more precise, yes.
So it's like
it does the disclosing.
Sphincter or something, like here's my where from, it's the sphincter, and it goes like this, and it's like
expands, contracts,
approaches this context, and it just everything occurs, it comes like this, right?
Right.
But
okay.
Come from itself discloses itself by not disclosing itself. It discloses itself by the tenure and sense and mood of, well, I guess it's it's not what appears, but the quality of what you experience. I think it's quality, right?
Nice. Yes. So
you give to give it.
I like right. So when you said sphincter, I thought aperture, right?
Yeah.
Pupil, right?
Yep.
Controls the amount of light, controls the contrast, controls the brightness, controls the chrome, right? And so the where from is that which does the disclosing, but it is also the quality of the disclosure, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's put this in the common phrase. Where is this coming from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where is this coming from? Right.
Right.
Guys like, I'm pissed with you, Chris. I'm like, well, where's this coming from?
Right.
Where is this coming from?
Yeah. In other words, you're not from where you're normally from right now.
Right. Right.
What's going on with your from
Right.
which you're
Right.
from, right? Because
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So in that case, let's take that example then. Chris and Guy are talking. Guy said something to me that's uncharacteristic. And I go, Guy, this doesn't sound like Guy. Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means, but in that context,
Well, obviously, you have to be enlightened to understand.
well, yeah, I know. And that's why we're just thrashing around.
Yes.
But that's okay. That's okay. Happy to thrash, Guy, always.
Yes.
So then in that case, it would have something to do with the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Not Guy and not Christopher, but Guy and Christopher, right? Meaning, where is this coming from? This isn't. This is what it isn't.
Yeah.
In this moment, this is what it isn't. It isn't coming from that quality of disclosure that makes sense of what is readable, what is legible within the world that opens between Guy and Chris. In other words, the particular mode, the where from, that is where you and I are from when we're sitting and talking. That is the where from. It is that where that is particular to you and I in discussion. Okay, so that's the where from. So if I say to you, where is this coming from? That immediately, that calls the where that is presupposed between Guy and Christopher into question. It's no longer the same ground that you and I are used to standing on when we speak. So the where must mean that something, the quality of disclosure that is a property of this relationship is suddenly no longer that property.
You're right. Because your come from is no longer where you're coming from.
Right.
And your come from is a come from that we share. Right. Therefore, when you don't come from there, I know it. And I'm like, ooh.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Like what? Yes, totally.
It's as if it's like a shibboleth, right? Like I use a term that we have a shared comprehension of, right? And shibboleth being the thing that distinguishes the insider from the outsider, right? So I use a term that we have as a shorthand, and you know that the where from is shared. It remains. Because I use the language that grows out of the where from that we both share. The minute I start speaking a language that is foreign to that where from, we're no longer from the same place. And at that point in time, something is modally confused because I'm no longer speaking into where I'm from. There's something alien all of a sudden.
Totally.
I'm not of the place. I'm not of the place whereof I speak and to whom I speak anymore.
And that would be also like, because there's that part of modal confusion where, I want what I really want is deep spiritual satisfaction and in a life partner, but where I go is the fish tanks. But no matter how long I go to the fish tanks, if where I'm coming from is the mode of finding a life partner, right? That's a that's a modal confusion, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So to go back to your proposition, which I like a lot, when the where from does not fit to the what is,
Yeah.
then it's modally confused.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then what does it mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's review. This is good. So the mode is the where from.
Mm-hmm.
Sense of place that from which grows all of the tacit knowledge as to how to interact with and encounter in its proper proportion that which is, right? Okay. So, and then when that where from doesn't fit itself to what is,
Yeah.
when what is can't grow out naturally
Yeah.
from that origin,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's a confusion.
Yeah.
So then what does it mean to resolve the confusion?
Well, okay, if we say in this case, I go, Chris, where is that coming from? And I ask you the question. I guess theoretically you could clear it up somehow by saying, oh, like last night I got a bug up my butt and I ate too much hot sauce and I feel pissed off. Your statement. Therefore, I'm angry with you. That's what's going on.
Okay.
Or, right. It seems like you can correct it with language.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
That dispute a modal confusion? Maybe it is. Let's think.
Well, yeah, because if you ate one, let's just say it's uncharacteristic for you to get angry, right? And then you're angry at me, and I go, whoa, where is this coming from? And what you say is the hot sauce last night, and so you introduce this as an anomaly that's normally not there. Therefore,
okay. So it's modal confusion in this case because my discomfort because of the hot sauce is the where from. In other words, everything I say and do and act out is being acted through the influence of that backgrounding condition.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a backgrounding condition.
Yes, that from which we're from. Yeah.
Okay. So the where from is like the backgrounding condition that colors or inflects or intones whatever being the behavior or the speech or the act with its particular character and quality. It's direction.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's why the where from always returns to something relatively, let's say, basic or primitive, like hunger or thirst or discomfort or something appetitive. Or, well, let's say that's where we begin. We begin with something appetitive, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we're meant to stay there, at least not according to the people we like to talk about so much.
Right.
So, okay, so then if the where from is appetitive, it means that whatever I'm feeling today, if I'm a bit tired, if I'm kind of thirsty, if I'm frustrated at some primitive level, the where from is the backgrounding condition of that appetitive state and the way in which it insinuates itself into the place where you and I are now. In other words, my conversation with Guy ends up being from that appetitive condition.
Yeah, totally.
And even if Guy is doing his most to try and elevate or rarefy the conversation, ultimately he can't, because the where from of the discussion will still be from my discomfort.
And is that a function? Is that the place from which you are free?
The place from which I'm free.
Yeah, in that I can try to influence it. I can try to give you an opportunity, but the place from which you are coming from seems, it seems like only you could come from there, right? Like, I can't come from there, you. I could share it with you, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is why.
But also maybe.
This is why you can't. It has to have two people. For example, with, I wonder why, if this is like with intimacy, both people have to be coming from, right, a particular vulnerable place for intimacy to occur. If just one person does it, right, and another person doesn't do it, someone may have an experience of intimacy, right, but it wasn't with that person, right? It was an experience of intimacy with themselves, but it wasn't shared, right?
Right.
This is interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. See, now we're getting onto something. So let's take that example. That's a good example. Okay. Just an intimate relationship. Okay. So if the two are, let's say, disposed relatively equally and reciprocally, right? They're both vulnerable. They're both generous with their attention to one another.
Yeah.
It's a relationship of reciprocal opening, right? Etc. Then the where from is a commons. It's something between the two that is genuinely reciprocal and evolves with the stereoscoped perspective that the two of them have invested together on the basis of that intimacy. And so it grows as a third entity, right? As a proper, as that proper third factor that we talk so much about with Dialogos, right?
Right.
Okay. But then the opposite scenario, the kind of the when it doesn't go well, in other words, is when one person might be making all of the movements to create that shared where from.
Yeah.
But one person is drawing back to a place, right? In the broadest possible sense. That is not the place of possibility that exists between those two people. In other words, if I come to my conversation with Guy and I'm rife with, I don't know, frustration
hot sauce
because of my discomfort, because of the hot sauce, of course, because of the hot sauce. If I'm still smarting because of the hot sauce, I can only ever speak and act from that frustration, from the particular kind of world and its properties that grow out of the affect of that particular state. That mode is confining. And however valiantly you as Guy try to lift us both out of it, I will bring us back to it. I will bring us back to it. I will bring us back to it. Because where I am from at that moment does not match the possibility of what is as a matter of potential between the two of us in conversation. In other words, I have not opened sufficiently to that potential because the world where I'm from is conditioned by a background of fundamental aggravation and hostility toward the fact of my existence at this moment.
Right, totally. And like, so in that sense in which, unless, so I can't change where you're coming from, right? I could ask you to come from a different place. I can invite you. I can write you a letter and can stand on one foot, but I cannot give you the experience of where you're coming from. Now, definitely, I think you could go, I could ask you, where are you coming from? And you're like, oh shit, I'm fucking in a bad mood, right? So in that moment, when you introduce your awareness to the come from, for the place from which you're coming from, in that moment of being aware of it, are you still coming from it?
Oh, good question. I think perhaps there's a moment when that question is posed.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, we find ourselves backing on to the value of asking the right question.
Yeah.
Right? It's right
Yeah.
that you should bring us back to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you ask me, where are you coming from?
Yeah.
And it's a big if,
Yeah.
I'm in that moment, I have the capacity to reflect reasonably on that question.
Right.
Let's say I turn to face myself for a moment, and I see the glaring red hot aggravation that is the particular film through which I'm feeling and speaking and acting. And I look at it for a moment and I go, oh, right, that's where I'm coming from.
Born in Louisiana.
There's a sense in that moment in which I am still coming from, I'm still coming from that state.
Yeah.
But for a moment, there's a kind of phantom presence that I'm able to take up just on the outskirts of that state.
Yeah.
Just on the outskirts of that state. Not enough to shake it loose, not enough to dispel it, but enough to be it at its fringe, right on the outer boundary of that state. And to see it, the best sometimes that can be said of that phantom awareness that's provoked into being by the right kind of question is that it can at least see the end boundary of a state.
Yeah.
And that's it, isn't it? It's that sometimes you can't shake yourself loose from a particular mode, but what you can do, if you're lucky, is you can realize in both senses, that remembering and making real, the fact that that mode is not identical to the totality of being itself. Because moods of existence, I'm saying mood as though it's synonymous with mode, but I think they're close. I think they're close.
Yeah.
They're pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing about a mood, let's say for a moment, just as a suggestion, that mood is the felt character or the felt sense of quality of a mode, right?
Yeah. Okay.
The mood is its aspectual property, or its felt subjective character.
So it's kind of like, it kind of gives the way something seems. When we say it seems like, it's the seeming.
It's the seeming. What does it seem like? How does it seem?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So the mood is the seeming of the mode. Let's say that. Just for an okay. I like that. I like the word seeming. That's good. Okay. So if the mood is the seeming of the mode,
mood is the seeming of the mode, right?
Then I lost my thread. Where was I going with that?
Well, we were talking about how it can't be shared at some level. Like I can't make you come from a place.
Right. You can't make me come from a place because the place I am doesn't strike me as a place that is differentiated from the sum total of existence, right? You know, when you feel a certain way and you feel it powerfully, there is no differentiation between the mood, that felt character of the mode through which you're speaking and acting and experiencing. There is no way of differentiating that mode from any proposal or proposition or impression you might have of the world itself, right? That's why a certain mode characterized by a certain mood can be so confining because it doesn't feel like something that you can trade or secede from or grow out of or exchange. It feels like the entirety of existence itself until, provoked by the right questions, such as you just did, you find yourself on the outer boundary of that state, and you realize in that moment, straddling the space between that state and the rest of possibility, that that's actually not equal to the totality of your existence. You know that suddenly there's an outer limit to it. And knowing
Implicitly, what does that do in knowing that there's a limit? Because before then, I am that it's hot. I am
right.
Yes. I am that it's always this way and it's always been that way or something, right?
Yes. So that's the difference between the where from and the is. The is that state which has an outer limit. Phenomenologically, let's bring your word back. Seems to have the where from is that state, that mode and its mood that has no seeming outer limit because it is existence in toto, right?
Oh, yes.
But the what is that state, that mood of a mode that does have a perceptible outer limit and is therefore not mistaken for an essence in itself.
Yes.
And when one is mistaken for the other, when a provisional state is mistaken for the totality of existence as a where from, that is a modal confusion.
That's a modal confusion. Exactly. Well done.
Okay, so.
And we were talking about this, just to, the Uber context was enlightenment, wisdom.
Using twisting, turning, playful, improvisational style to find our way there.
I just drew a little picture to help us out. Hang on, I'll share it for a second.
Did you?
Yeah. There we go. Okay, can you see that?
How did you do that so quickly? Incredible.
I drew this before. This is actually. Oh, this is you're cheating because you're supposed to get this, I think, the second weekend of your course. So this is.
Oh, I'm getting a sneak peek. I'm gonna.
But this kind of gets at a little bit about the come from, right? Of like, if we say that every action, right? How it kind of works is we go like every action. Every result and outcome, right, is in correlation with some action someone took. It's not cause, but it's in correlation, right? And that every action, right, all behavior is always already bound with an occurring view, a way it occurs, right?
Okay.
So if it occurred to me that you loved me, right, the action or what I would say or wouldn't say would be very different than if it occurred to me that you hated me, let's say, right? All the way, the action would also be like my pulse and my sweat glands and, internal and external actions.
Okay.
And then occurring view, right? What gives that view is the point of view, you could say is your perspective, your frame of reference, your listening, your style or how you observe, right? And if we say most human conversations are really in the domain of actions, results, and outcomes. Like almost all conversations are, you're either talking about what isn't the case, what is the case, why, what should be the case, right? What they have, don't have, want to have, wish they always had, what you're doing, not doing, should do, like most human conversations are about these two things, right? This is where it starts to get a little bit crazy because the occurring view, we don't make the distinction occurring, right? We just make the distinction and we call this is. And that's the thing that you were talking about, right? That's the big
seeming.
Yeah.
the seeming of things.
Right. Yeah. I don't have a perspective. No.
No.
I just know there's the way that it is. It's
Right.
I'll just look. It's a fact, right?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right. Right. Right.
And it's funny because when you say you know someone, what do you really mean? I think what you mean is you know this.
Yeah. You know the where from.
Right? And like, because if you can kind of predict, right, what movie to invite your mom to and definitely what movie not to, right? Because you know she has a point of view that you have come to know, right? And so you sort for the movie, right? Well, where does that come from? Like, if we go down and we call this way of being, that's what I like to call this, is the way of being, where you have the linguistic sphere, the emotional or affective sphere, the mood, the body, and the soma. And that, like, you could say your linguistic narratives, right, definitely express and support your mood, right? Right. And the greater the mood, right, the more it's going to generate the linguistic structures and narratives that you sell, right? So they're self-confirming and self-reflective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, you know, your mood of anxiety, right, as it deepens, right, that's going to, your body's the bearer of your stories, right? And so that's definitely going to reflect your mood, right, and confirm it.
Right.
Right. Same thing with body and linguistic, and they start to confirm each other. And that, once that happens, that's where your way of being becomes fixed. And once it's fixed, right, everything becomes very, very, very predictable. Even down to the results in my life, right, are confirm my linguistic, emotional, So everything folds back on itself in a co-reflective, self-confirming, autopoetic, self-saming loop. That's how our identity becomes fixed, right?
Right.
And so it's, what's interesting about this, so we bring this up when we talk about the explorer stage, which is really how to get someone's world, right? This is what we're starting to get at, is there's a way that it occurs for them, right? There's a place from which they're coming from, right? And it's not like they're coming from that, they're coming from there, right?
I know, I'm following. I know exactly what you mean by that.
But the moment you kind of hear their occurring view, and you can let them know that, yeah, you hear it as their occurring view, in that moment, right, there's an opportunity where a little gap, right, gets created between their occurring view, right, and what may be reality, right?
Is that, okay, let's stop there. Is that gap that occurs between, that de-essentializing gap, that gap that reveals for the first time that the point of view is not equivalent to the entirety of possible points of views, that crack that appears, that calls into question the essence of the view that's taken by this pattern, is that crack opened up by you as the questioner? Because if you get the world that is essential to your, so if you and I are talking, and I'm this guy portrayed in this diagram, and you're talking to me as Guy Sengstock, the circling maestro, and you get my world.
Yeah.
And so for the first time, I, who am locked in the chamber of that world, I know that Guy Sengstock lives in here now with me.
Yeah.
But Guy Sengstock lives in here with me. But at the same time, I sense, if I'm paying attention at all, and maybe I'm not, but if I am, I also know that Guy Sengstock actually also lives outside of it as well.
Yeah, totally.
which means that Guy Sengstock, unlike me, is in at least two places at once.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
the fact that does my realization that Guy is in two places at once, is that sufficient to call the essentialism of my world into question? In other words, does the possibility of thinking and knowing and being otherwise come as a property of the relationship one has with someone who can be in two places at once, both the where from and the what is, and know the difference?
Yep. I think it's one of the basic conditions of possibility for that to happen.
Okay.
Because if I go, for example, if I go, you're depressed and you haven't said anything about how it seems, but I can kind of feel, and it looks like, it seems like it's going to be forever, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. In that moment though, right? Like, because whenever you distinguish forever, you also distinguish not forever. Right. So just by creating distinction, right, create possibility, right? Whether or not that person actually, I mean, there's so many different factors along with this, but I think this is where people are free.
Okay, this is great. Okay, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but
no, that's it.
Keep going. Okay.
This was what we were kind of talking about, right?
Okay, no, that's it.
But that's the kind of thing where I think deep transformations, right, have to do with where something happens that so radically opens one of these up.
Yeah. Right.
That has one see. And I think this is some of the things that Dialogos does, right? I think in a big way, it goes through the perspective per se. But if we say, and there's two ways it can happen, right? One can be this, where you consider something, right, that opens something up that you had never seen before, and it is transformative and changes all of this, right? It could be something like that. Or there's like the marine version, which is you just actually put somebody in, the results and outcomes and actions are so extremely different, right? And you make them do those things over and over and over again, that the way of being has to adjust and transform, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's two kind of modes of being able to go through this. But I think that when we're talking about in dialectic into dialogos, when we're talking about, well, why bother doing it, right? What are some of the things that someone would get out of doing it as a practice? I think it has to do with this, right?
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
Just the sense that where you're hearing other people's, you're if anything, you're just the fact that we're talking about the same thing, and that there's 4 different perspectives in the room about the one thing, right? Just the fact of otherness, right? Mm-hmm. Creates this possibility, but that's on steroids, because it's like, you know, as that opens up, because there's that thing, there's that thing about really good conversation kind of in some sense refreshes your perceptions, right? You walk out and like the occurring is different.
The occurring is different.
Yeah. How things, this box, right? This box, how you see the box. It's the same substance, but like all of a sudden I walk outside and say, we did a Dialogos on love, and I got something on love, and I let go of something about love, or I realized something about love, and then I go home and my wife is a completely different shape than she was before, right? And I think sometimes, right, it can be deep enough, right, to where there can be a shift that's so deep, right? And I think that this can happen over time with Dialogos, right? I've definitely seen it happen in circling where a real deep linguistical structure about reality shifts, right?
Right.
Boom, 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 and it meditates back up and around,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. Hmm. Because, okay, so that's interesting. So I like that. The occurring is different.
Yeah.
The occurring is different.
Mhm.
Because when you have a dialogos about love, and then you go home to your wife, the pattern that is traced out, the pattern that is your definition, and by definition, we don't mean a semantic definition. By definition, we mean an entire, we mean the logos of love that
Yeah.
is mapped by your comprehension, by
Right.
your apprehension, right? We each have an apprehend, like, let's say, if we're going for a moment to take for granted the being of the forms, let's say, which I'm happy to, for the moment, take for granted, then we each have an apprehension of those forms.
Yeah.
And one of the things that dialectic into dialogos does, that dialogos does on its own when it strikes, is that it, well, it's the where from and the what is relationship again. It that the where we realize that we awaken to the difference between the where from and the what is. I become aware suddenly that my apprehension of love is not in fact love.
Yeah.
And because of that, the possibility, the ways of love and the works of love, those are two different
the ways
books by two different people, but the ways of love and the works of love suddenly fan out in their scope of possibility. So that if love is no longer equal to my logos of love, the pattern and configuration of love that is my apprehension, mine as Christopher, then that means that suddenly, when that apprehension is no longer mistaken for the totality of the form and its idea with a capital I, then suddenly that sort of nameless totality of that idea can present itself to me in ways that are not, that do not conform to the pattern of my apprehension anymore. In other words, I can be surprised by demonstrations of love that I would not have understood categorically to belong to love in the first place. I might become capable of seeing certain people's behavior as gestures of love, when before I may have dismissed them as something else entirely, right? It's the sensibility transcendence phenomenon, right? It's that suddenly the category is shaken and the definition therein is de-essentialized. The logos of the idea, the ideology, in other words, that I have of love is taken down from its position at the top of the hierarchy. And suddenly love, mysteriously, namelessly, can present itself in ways that are no longer bounded by the criterion associated with that logos of apprehension. And so suddenly love can be in ways that are not predictable, that are not necessarily, that are absurd. That are absurd.
Totally.
Okay.
So it's like
all of that was implicit in what you just showed me. I'm just trying to articulate it out, right? Because that pattern, that system, that where from is the ideology of the individual, right? It's the logos of ideas and how they're governed and organized. And when you, doing what you do, get into that world, understand that ideology, that logos from within, and keep part of your conscious attention, especially when it's shared, outside the bounds, then without having to put too fine a point on it. You're demonstrating, you're embodying the realization that there is something outside of it.
Yeah. Wait a minute. You're embodying the realization. What's the realization? What's the outside?
The realization that the logos that governs the meaning of ideas, and ideas not in a dispassionate sense, but ideas being those forms of life and forms of comprehension that ultimately condition my response to the world.
And that goes through all loves of all the different kinds. It shows itself in the logos, let's say.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then you come in, guy comes in, listens, you listen to me, you hear the logos.
Yeah.
You hear it, and it's the logos insofar as it's an intelligible organization of reality and a schematization of what is on the basis of where I'm from.
Yeah.
And you as the listener can hear both. You hear the logos of what is,
Yeah.
but you hear the where from of the perspective that gives rise to that logos in the first place. In other words, you see what you hear what I say, and you hear the logos within the words. And you also see that the logos in my words is partial.
Right.
It's not the logos with a capital L. It's the particular organizational form of reality as it occurs to me. You see this is what you see, to use your word, and I should have in the first place. You see the occurring of the logos to me in the logos that I present to you.
Yeah, totally.
So what you hear when you hear me speaking is you hear the particular manner, or shall we say mode of occurrence.
Yeah.
That is the logos as me.
I hear you, but I'm sorry. I hear you, but I listen to your logos.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Hearing you brings me home to intelligibility that is where you're coming from, and I listen to that, right?
Yes.
In respects.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so
you listen. Yes. Yes.
So then if I speak that, I'm speaking in some sense. If you speak to me and then I'm able to like hear you and say it more clearly, it say it more than you said it, let's say, like there's something that
like,
goes that's like, I think then hearing that, what do I hear that so if basically Guy listens to you, you go blah 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 blah, and I hear your words, I listen to your logos, and then I speak your logos, which of course will be probably fewer words, more pertinent, less noise, right? And I speak it to you.
Yes.
And then, well, yeah, they do
that.
Yeah.
The round eyes. You sharpen it. You sharpen the logos.
Yeah. Yes.
You sharpen it.
Am I revealing that you have logos? Is that the insight? Is that this? Am I revealing it seems like the logos is the thing that kind of like, there are letters, but what brings those letters together into a word, right? Those words into a sentence, those sentences a paragraph. Yes. The logos is that thing that gathers all of that. Right. And if I can conform my words into the shape of that gathering more precisely than you could in that moment, I am, yeah, what, okay. Why is that so fucking profound for people? Like, I think we're getting to it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Why is that so profound to people? So for one thing, if I can speak what you know more than you know it,
Yeah.
what I reveal to you is that there is more of what you know than you know. First of all,
Yeah.
that's the recollection, right? That's the demonstration from recollection, right? I'm revealing to you that there is more to what you know, not to what is, but to what you know than you know.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a meieutic function there, right? By returning your knowledge to you more exactly,
Yeah.
I reveal to you that your knowing is more than you know about what you know. Okay, so there's one thing. That's pretty damn profound, right?
Totally.
Because
So
that not only does that give intelligibility, but it gives courage. It encourages. Okay, so there's one thing.
it also gives, I think it gives something like, because if logos was the same structure as being itself, right? So if you think about it like that, like if I'm able to give, say words that are more direct shape of the logos, right, of what you said, right, and I could hear it from you and then share it back to you,
Uh-huh.
then in some sense I'm like, you're kind of, I'm revealing being, like you be, like in some
Yes.
sense you get to be more somehow,
Yes.
right? Like that, you get more of that.
Yes.
Yeah, you get more that you are.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
Okay, so there's something like a presencing.
really, like with Plotinus said like being and intelligibility are like, they're the same thing.
Right.
If I reveal
Right.
that you have more intelligibility than you could say at that moment, but I could hear it and reveal it to you, it's in some sense, it's letting you know, well, it's letting you know that you, yes, you have more being than you thought.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
being.
Okay, so it's not only that there is more,
Yeah.
but
So,
that there is more of me,
yeah.
and that the more there is of me is somehow coextensive with the more that is,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that they are mutually revealing.
Yes. Yes.
So that's what happens on one level.
Right.
Okay, that's good. So when you relay to me my logos and you sharpen it and tighten it into a far more intelligible form,
Yeah.
you are revealing the more that I am, the more that I am knowing, and the more of me there is to know. And at the same time, you're affirming my relationship to all of those things, because you are also confirming the perspective, the where from. You are demonstrating that the where from I am from is a real place from which to be, right?
And it makes sense.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You
Okay.
make sense.
I make sense. Right. You're telling me, you're showing me, you're not just telling me, you're showing me that
Yeah.
I make sense,
Yeah.
not in a kind of egoic affirmation, but in a way that confirms my relationship to what is real, that reveals a continuity between myself and what is real,
Your
right?
organization as a being is
Okay,
organized, right?
right.
It's organized. It's valid. It's a valid, it's validity. That's what it is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you're giving me a kind of ontological validity. You're giving me,
Right.
you're realizing me, okay? In both senses. Okay. So you're realizing me by giving me a continuity with what is real. You're validating the being that I am, and that I participate in the being that is, being that I am. and that there's something continuous between what I know, what I am, and that there is more of both to be and know. All of those things are happening in that one demonstration of relaying back to me the logos of my speech, which is the logos of my belief, the pattern that configures intelligibility in the recesses of my mental space.
From where you're coming from.
Psyche, in psyche. Okay.
Where you're coming from.
Pardon?
Where you're coming from.
Where I'm coming from. Okay. And you're telling me that the where I am coming from is a real place.
Yeah, totally.
That it exists.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I can articulate it. And I could even articulate it back to you better than you articulated it yourself. It makes that much sense, right?
Right. Okay.
Real. You get real. Right. Yes.
Right. Okay. So there are two. Okay. So that's one thing that's happening in that moment, which is that it's that validation.
Pause for a second. You could just see, like, if we say something like the opposite of this is like gaslighting, you really get how fucking damaging it is, right?
Totally.
Uh-huh.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the opposite. Okay, so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I think you're right. I think that's a very good point. Yes. Whatever the opposite is of this that we've just described is that which undermines the capacity to form a relationship with what is real and to be confident in that relationship.
Yeah.
And that's devastating.
Yeah, totally.
It's devastating.
Totally.
But there's something else that's happening too, because so there's something intrinsic that's happening. Mm-hmm. The perspective that is being validated by the paraphrasal of the logos is finding its internal integrity. Okay, it's becoming more, it's fastening together more coherently, right? The perspective that is the mode of regard for being itself is fastening together more coherently as a result of being circulated through dialogos, right? Through the logos and back. Okay. Yeah. So that's what makes it dialogos, right? Because you have recreated the logos of that perspective in such a way that coheres it together more precisely and more intelligibly. In other words, you have revealed the moreness of the perspective, and that moreness of the perspective has allowed it to come together more tightly, more exactly, in a way that is fitted. But you've also done something else, which is that something more instrumental. You've done something intrinsic in that you've helped to cohere and fasten together that which already was in relation to its where from.
Yeah.
But what you've also done is you have generated faith in the relationship in whose care that validation has just taken place. In other words, you have engendered a trust in yourself because you've now just made that move. And suddenly, not necessarily you as a person, although that's an easy mistake to make, very easy mistake to make, and we all make it when we vest the authority of wisdom on the shoulders of an individual because they've performed this function for us. But what you've done is you have given your relationship, the relationship in whose care this move has been made, you vested that relationship with a certain kind of love and confidence that will bear the weight of more dramatic transformation, right? So if suddenly No one has ever spoken my language to me before. No one has ever represented what it is that I feel, what it is that is inmost to me. No one has ever depicted that to me in a way that made me feel more real.
Yeah.
God, that's never happened. And suddenly it happens, and it's like the world is remade before my eyes, right? It's suddenly I am more real to myself than I was before. And that happened opposite you.
Yeah.
Now, suddenly this relationship is vested with a sacredness,
Yeah.
because in the care of this relationship, I have undergone in the span of a moment something metanoetic, right? I have been returned to myself in ways more precise, in ways more truthful. And so then the faith that that first order maneuver has made, the faith that it has generated, will allow you to make other moves and bring me along with you.
Oh, wow, 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 wow.
So you've done two things with that first paraphrasal of the logos. You've tightened it in its integrity, and you've created a relationship of faith that has the potential of taking that wherefrom logos that is mine and helping me to realize the differential, the infinite differential between my logos and the logos.
Yes, yes.
And I will trust you because you have made me more real. I will trust the man who makes me more real to myself, because he might also appreciate my relationship to what is real in general. And I will go with him in all likelihood.
Right.
I'll go with him because he's done that. He's earned my faith.
Yeah.
And that's what Socrates does, right? That's his pattern.
Yeah, that is
right? He makes sure he steals the perspective of whomever he speaks with and if he does it variously, right? With all of his analogies and examples. And he makes sure that he has a very precise, playfully, a very precise reiteration of the logos that organizes the presuppositions of his interlocutor. And he relays it back to them in such a way that he appreciates their understanding of their own perspective and deepens it before subverting it, undermining it, and ultimately throwing it into the fire of aporia, right? And they go with him, not all of them, but the ones that go with him because he has made that first move, so that when he makes his second, they're primed to follow him.
Totally. And because it's interesting, this is where it starts to get into what aporia is. It could be either, you could look at it as it's like a ceiling or beginning, right? And I think the difference that makes that difference is it's this moreness that's revealed, right? Like the disclosure is like, by the time Socrates is done with you, what you said, well, I don't know if this is, but like in deep, and somebody really gets you, and they take what you said, and with their logos, right? They listen, they hear you and listen to your logos, and they bring the form of that logos in crispness in a way that's actually more coherent than what you said, but it's direct, it's more true than what you had said, right? So, which gives you one in that moment. So I think what you're saying is it gets you one, is there's a deep sense of validity in that I am a being that makes sense. And because I have a reality and I am a real.
Right.
Because I can say blah, 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 blah. And then you can actually say it back to me more profound than I could say it. Right. Yeah, there's a moreness there, that more, I think, somehow meta states throughout, right? It kind of like that moreness is what is that, like, what gets revealed is that moreness. And I think that's what draws you out, right? And that's what I would imagine I have faith in you, right? And that there's something about being with you, your relationship to your logos, right? Affords a relationship with my logos such that I can understand, like, what is it? I can, through interacting with you, I end up being more than I am.
Right.
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh, man. Right. I end up being more than I am, which is also more of myself
Yeah, exactly.
at the same time.
Totally. Totally.
Okay, you just said something that's really important. So, and it also gives still more significance to the term dialogos. And I hadn't, this isn't the way I'd been thinking about it, but now you've said this. So two things happen simultaneously. Let's say each interlocutor has their logos, and by their logos we mean the sort of the structural functional organization of their perspective that gives lucidity to the world before their eyes, right? Something like that. Yeah. The organization of intelligibility, the occurring of reality to them, let's call that provisionally their logos, okay? The occurring of reality to them. Okay, so I give you my perspective, I relay it to you. I depict myself in all kinds of clumsy, stumbling ways. And you take that and you take it mindfully and you relay it to me, as you said, in ways that are validating, more precise, more exacting, wholer, more total, more encompassing, right? You reveal that which is in my perspective and affirm it, give it ground, give it structure. Okay, so two things have happened there, right? You've made me more real, as we've said, but you've also implicitly, right, without having to make a separate argument for it, in one stroke, you've made me more real. And by relaying my own logos in the care of your own, you've multiplied it to the power of another logos, if I can put it that way. It's sort of a silly way to say it. But imagine that, right? One logos, one occurring of intelligibility, multiplied by the power of another, which means that you've implicitly given me faith in the reality that there is logos beyond the logos that I am and that I know, while simultaneously validating and affirming, in an ontological sense, the reality of that which I am and which I speak. You've done both of them at once, right? You've moved me in two directions. You've backed me onto myself, and you've also drawn me forward by creating an implicit relationship and indeed now a kind of dependency on the prospect of gotta get this right. This is like my faith in you, because you've been able to in other words, it's like Guy Sengstock, my relationship with you as a person becomes symbolic for the multiplication of the logos in which reality occurs to me, right? You become a symbol for the capacity of my intelligibility to both affirm and to multiply. But it also means that you sort of insinuated into my organizational view of the world. It's like you've used a different material to restore the fundamental scaffold, right? It's like when people restore ancient works, when they restore ancient churches or when they restore paintings.
Yeah.
They restore something that was, but they restore it with ingredients and materials
Yeah.
that renew it,
Yeah.
but also insinuate something outside of itself,
Yeah.
and demonstrate in a way that seems paradoxical that something that is outside of me, or that appears, that seems outside of me, can be used to complete me.
Yeah.
Not complete me in a sense of being finished,
Yeah.
but that can build on the project, that
Right.
can make me more of what I am
Right.
by this is such a difficult thing to I'm like trying to find exactly the right formulation of this idea. I mean, I know you've got it. I know. It's just is more for
Yeah,
to
let's
try and anyway. Over to you. What
yeah.
what do you make of this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's something like, well, a couple of things. I don't think that when I listen to you, I'm doing something to you.
Mm.
I think we participate in your logos. And because I can only participate in your logos, right? Or because I can only participate in your logos with my logos, there's something that we're sharing together, right? So there's a sharing together of logos, because it's also, well, think about it. Think about, for example, let's see if I could draw this difference. The experience of being heard. It's kind of like, there's on one level, I can share back what you just said and let you know that I get it, right? Boom. But then there's, I get what you're saying and I share it back to you, but then I actually take that distinction and then I start talking about my own life in terms of that distinction. And then you witness it transform via the thing, like you witness me talk about my life, and it's my speaking is now harvesting possibilities, which are a function of having listened to you grokking the distinction, right? It's when it's like there's this quality of listening that has to do with the listener being changed by the listening process. And that when that's really high, that's where people feel like, oh, wow, you really got me.
Right.
Right? You really got me. To where I'm open enough. And if if the view is whatever, structurally coherent enough or whatever, and I can not only just understand what you're saying, but I actually can crawl inside of it, share it with you, and then describe my life differently from it. Then I'm showing you that your logos just enriched mine.
Right.
Right. And then
Right.
probably in that whole thing, you're getting something more about your thing that you didn't get before. Plus, you're witnessing, this thing being shared, which is more. Like there's this more, right? Right.
In other words, it's the reciprocity of reinvention that properly inculcates the faith that we're describing. It's not simply your capacity to reinvent me on the basis of using your logos to renew my own. It's also bearing witness to the fact that I have somehow recreated I have recreated you. I don't know, what is it? I'm somehow recreated by my recreating of you.
Yes.
And that the reciprocity of that process is what ultimately engenders the relationship with the Dialogos itself.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
So when I see that we've somehow,
there's somewhere in there where it starts to get, there's somewhere in there where what must start to implicitly or explicitly be overheard is logos itself.
right.
That's when it goes like, that's where it goes beyond just me listening to you and you listening to me being changed as being changed as the process of hearing you. My own life gets changed. You seeing that kind of getting it being changed. At some point, right? We're now beyond both of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. You can't see the spokes anymore at that point.
Totally.
It's just motion.
Yeah. It's just motion.
It's just motion.
And that thing that you just see in that motion is that logos itself.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's what we mean. I think that's exactly right. That when we say the logos descends, when the logo, and then the dialogos becomes through that logos, which has descended by the motion of the reciprocity of the dynamic.
I walk away with faith in logos itself, which is the grounding of all conversations, where it's no longer than I just have faith in you to be able to hear me. I have faith in any point in which there is a dialogue, right?
Right. Because I have faith in the appearance or descent of the logos upon those conversations in which two logoi, I guess that's the proper plural, are multiplied by one another's power.
Yeah.
And the hosts thereof are reinvented by the process of being both affirmed and changed by one another.
Cool. Oh, not bad. Not a bad 1 hour, 48 minutes.
Sounds like something that we should do.
Yeah. Let's do that.
It's a good thing we've just done it.
So kind of coming back, so where we started was coming from. Yeah. For the place from which we come. Now, I don't know if this fits in here, but I know it's been haunting me since I read it. Actually, let me just grab it really quick. It's right over here. I think I sent a picture of this to you. Okay, yeah, it's this one. This is Eckhart. That I cannot know, because my soul powers receive only in images. They have to know and lay hold of each thing in its appropriate image. They cannot recognize a horse when presented with the image of a man. Right? And since all things enter from without, that knowledge is hidden from my soul, which is to her great advantage. This not knowing, it's got a parenthesis between not and knowing. This not knowing makes, or it has a hyphen, I'm sorry, makes her wonder and leads her to eager pursuit, for she perceives clearly that it is, but does not know how or what it is. So this not knowing makes her wonder, right? I think this is the definition of wonder almost, right? That, knowing that, right?
That it is.
Yeah. Leads her to eager pursuit, for she perceives clearly that it is. That being God being birthed in her soul, right?
I am that I am.
Yep. But does not know how or what it is, because to know how or what would to know you know those through images, right? Whenever a man, I'll just read the last part. Whenever a man knows the causes of things, then he at once tires of them and seeks to know something different. Always clamoring to know things is forever inconstant. And so this unknown knowing, just got a hyphen between the two. This unknown knowing keeps the soul constant and yet spurs her on to pursuit. Always clamoring to know things is forever inconstant. And so this unknown keeps the soul constant and yet spurs her on to pursuit.
Oh, Eckhart.
Like he's saying this too is
this what Nishitani means by the self-realization of reality? Is that what Eckhart's talking about?
Real, I think so. The real self. The real
self-realization of reality. Yeah. The relating to
the real
that its relation to that it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yes. I'm not totally familiar with what Nishtani means by that. So I can't speak from his, from his precincts, but it sounds, there's a resonance there. There's a resonance there. That's beautiful. Boy, Eckhart.
Also this thing about this not knowing makes her wonder, right? And this wonder leads her to eager pursuit, which is a way of participating, right? Where she perceives clearly that it is, but not know how or what it is. That, so for example, when you think about, as far as I can tell, we can't get that something is from a what or a how. No. We don't really know how we understand that it is, that something is. No. But we clearly perceive it. We clearly perceive that it is. But when we look at what it is that we're perceiving, it's not presented in any way, right? That it is a very mysterious thing. And the thing that he's linking it to is this direct experience to the disposition of wonder. And this kind of link between wonder and participation, right?
Right.
Which is I think what philosophy, right? If we say that in the Greeks that philosophia arose out of the fundamental disposition of wonder, right?
Right.
Philosophy was the way one participates when one is in this position of wonder. It's a
right.
Philosophy, right. A way of participation.
Right. And that kind of brings us back to the aporia, right? You paused on the aporia. That brings us back to the aporia because it's the emptying or kenosis, right? Or the emptying of positive content in the what and the how that returns us to the wonder that it is,
Yeah.
right? Like emptying oneself, even momentarily, because boy, it's only ever momentary, of positive egoic content, right? I mean, in a phenomenal sense, right? Of momentarily forgetting oneself in terms of all of the positive content of the ego. That moment of forgetting oneself opens one to the wonder that I am, right? And that's an ecstatic moment.
Yeah.
It's grief and it's joy at the same time, right? You ever had them? Well, of course you have, right? It like
totally, and it's so unpossessable. It's the
there we go. There we go. Back to the beginning. It's unpossessable. And that is the mode, the rightful mode wherein to encounter oneself as a self and wherein to encounter being. That it is. Not how, not what, not when, but that.
Right.
That. And so maybe it is that the motion of the wheel, the blurred energy, the blurred motion of dialogos per se, is that motion that can, because of its, in that sort of centripetal force that it gathers as it begins to spin, and as the distinct spokes of that wheel, or the distinct properties, or the distinct what, the distinct how, the distinct when, that are presented in the propositions of those ideas that are being referred, when all of that blurs into motion and becomes one and becomes indistinct as a matter of content, that it goes from being, it becomes that it is, right? It becomes that it is.
Right.
Something like that.
Totally, like it overhears itself.
It overhears itself. It relates to itself.
Yes.
And right, doesn't that Schindler say that about the good? The good is that which relates it to itself.
Totally.
It's that
Yes.
self-binding. I don't even know, right? It is that which is self-binding, right?
Yeah.
When I become that I am, and that I am becomes real to me, I become good. I participate.
When I become good. Say that again. When I become that I am, that I am becomes real.
When I become that I am by realizing that I am, I become good.
When I become that I am through realizing that I am, then I am good. Yes. And it retroacts the goodness. It goes even into the past, right?
Right.
Then everything up to that point was the story of good unfolding.
That's right. That's so interesting that you say that. I was just thinking about this. I was writing to myself yesterday, and that came out, which is this idea that that form of realization, because it is not of time, because it is out of time, it permeates time in a way that is not temporal, right? All of time is changed by it. It retroactively changes the meaning of one's history, because history, especially autobiographical history, is so infinitely reinventable, so infinitely changeable, because it's not real in the way that we think it's real, right?
Come from changes.
The where from changes, exactly.
You are recalling. Yes.
The where from changes.
Yeah.
The where from of one's history changes. And so the history itself changes. And so the signification of the history changes.
Right.
Because its where from is not a temporal where from. The origin we're looking for is ontological. It's not temporal, it's vertical, not horizontal, right? And so when the where from becomes something out of time, it disperses itself immediately across all of time and engulfs it.
Yes. Totally.
Which is what's redeeming about it. That's why the Logos is the Redeemer, because because the transmutation of all of time and its history by the incursion of eternity into it, by realizing that one is under that aspect, is infinitely redeeming of all of time's faults and flaws and sins and imperfections of misapprehension.
Right. Redeeming. Yes. I keep thinking about it keeps, how to word this is another way of wording this, but the sense of where the more it's like, the more future I gather, the more I realize that there's like untapped reservoirs of possibility in my past, right?
Yes.
In some sense,
Yes.
that future is that dynamic of that the possibilities aren't necessarily in the future, that the possibilities are in the past. And the future is something like the dynamic of changing where from or something like maybe the future is the dynamic of thatness.
Right.
Right.
The future is say that again.
Dynamic of thatness.
The future is the dynamic of thatness.
Yeah.
The dynamic of thatness. We're seeking possibilities in the past.
There's ones where it's like you can't say you've ever seen it, right? You can't. Yeah, it's not. It's never a what, right? It never. It's like. It seems like it's pretty close to something like that. This is the constant sense of the future. I think that's what you're. Oh, I never thought about that. Oh fuck. Fuck with that's PHUCK.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
Okay.
Which is a testament to the fact that two utterances can sound exactly the same, right?
Absolutely.
In that homophonous way, and be completely different in their sig.
Well, this has been absolutely wonderful as usual.
Sure has.
Yeah, that was really fun. Thank you.
That was good. That was good. We had no idea where we were going on that one, but here we are.
Yeah, we just
at the end and the beginning.
All right, my friend.
Thank you.
I'll see you on Tuesday.
Yes, exactly. Looking forward to it. All right. Talk to you soon. That was fun.